Hey everyone, today we'll talk about the powers of continuous innovation. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live Show. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Mazor, Kario Innovation and Value Creation Expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me, I have a guest. Hi, Arent.
Hi, Adi.
Hey, Arent van Spijker. Spijker. Was
There
good
you
enough?
go. Very good, good enough. Absolutely, absolutely.
Arent is a partner at BlinkLane Consulting and the author of Continuous Innovation book. So we're happy to see you with me today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're much invited to join the discussion and ask questions, and we'd love to hear what you think. So I'll start with the question that I usually ask most of my interviewee. It seems that all companies need to innovate, or most companies need to innovate. So what are the biggest obstacles to innovation?
I guess the biggest obstacle to innovation is the company itself. It's the going concern. So actually, it was already in 1942 that Joseph Schumpeter, the economist, noted that incumbent firms are so busy defending their current positions and mitigating the risk of the capital invested in the going concern that they fail to innovate, because any form of innovation is a deviation from efficiency.
Yeah.
I think the biggest obstacle to innovation is the fact that companies need to overcome that extreme focus on efficiency and effectiveness on the going concern, that they're not willing to invest in the future, and that needs to be a very conscious investment, and that is a very big obstacle.
But big companies today, which were born digital or technological, they are very innovative, although they are very big. Like we could say Google or Amazon, for example, and they are still doing that. So is it like relevant only for non-technical big companies and corporates?
No, it's actually, so we tend to take Google and Amazon and Apple as our benchmarks, but they are the unicorns of the world. They're not the point of reference for most companies. In fact, a lot of companies, I started my career out just before the internet bubble, so in the mid 1990s, and many of the companies that I saw rising very quickly in the internet economy were very new, very innovative at the time, but they have declined already. And they've fallen victim to other innovative companies that have just beat them to it. So the fact that companies are high tech is no guarantee that they are more innovative than others. We need to separate the innovativeness of the technology against the innovativeness of the company. And an innovative company is a company that constantly reinvents itself and constantly has this process of innovation. That's why my book is called Continuous Innovation.
Yeah, I have it here. Yeah, I'm going to show it. It's a really good book, and I even finished it, so it's a really good book.
Good, thank you very much. But I guess that's why the book is called Continuous Innovation, because companies need a process to continuously innovate, try out new products, try out new business models, try out new markets. And the reason for that is that up until 15 years ago, the economy was relatively slow. The new technology development and the economical developments were relatively slow, and it gave companies enough time to reorganize for a particular status quo and then leverage that status quo for a particular number of years. But over the last 15 to 20 years, the economical changes and technological changes have come to such a great speed that there is no more time left to leverage that economic steadiness, stableness, and we need to continuously reinvent ourselves.
Yeah. When you say like continuously reinventing and innovating, it seems like relentless. Like you can never just rest and say, okay, we're making lots of money and we can maybe optimize the processes as is, and maybe even make more money from the same thing.
It does exist though, and I think it's a good thing. But we have come to identify the company as the part of the organization that leverages that existing business model. And the difficulty and the relentlessness, in your words, that come with that is that companies need to have a second operating model alongside the operational efficiency, which is their renewal mode. And they need to be very, very stringent on optimizing their core running concern, because that's where the money needs to be made in order to support the more innovative part. And I guess that we've seen lots of examples over the last few years of companies that have founded corporate garages or startups of their own, or incubator labs, and that was successful to some extent. But what you see is that the biggest challenge is actually in incorporating the two and making sure that you get this, what is then called the ambidextrous organization, that is an organization at two speeds. One is the going concern that's highly optimized, it's very efficient, it's making lots of money. And there is the innovation stream that constantly tries out the new products, the new business models, the new customer segmentation. But there also needs to be an interface between the two. And I think that's where the difficulty arises. That how do you transfer the new into the existing company?
Yeah. When you say renewal, it looks like a company is like a live entity. When you need, like, some of the things are dying, and you need to make sure that it's renewing themselves with new like cells in order to make it sustainable, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good business associate of mine pointed out that not only do you need to look at the renewal, you need to look at the discontinuation. You very explicitly need to look at the discontinuation of the old to make room for the new, because lots of time when I said, at the beginning of this talk, is that innovations are sort of like competing against their own company, and that's because they are competing for space and attention and money on growth. And by discontinuing the old and actively replacing it with an innovation, you gain a strategy for renewal in your company.
Yeah.
And that makes sure, if you have that strategy in place, if you have a mechanism for that, if you will, where you decide at one point that a particular innovation has gained enough traction, has scaled up to the extent where it becomes sensible to replace the old with the new, actually two very interesting things happen. The innovation then becomes mature, but it also changes the organization. So a lot of times innovations die and suffocate because they need to be pushed into the framework of today's organization. So they need to adhere to our existing enterprise architecture. They need to work with people that have particular competencies or skills. They have to fit in our existing processes. So the existing company is very determined to push the innovation, to mold the innovation to the existing organization. And what we should actually spend time on as leaders in organizations is to explicitly discontinue the products and services that are being replaced by the innovative products and services, or make room for new products and services that will sit alongside our existing models, and then change enterprise architecture, competencies, processes, maybe partnerships with other companies, and make room for that, explicitly make room. And then the organization becomes the live entity that you talk about. It's never the one fixed set that will remain and give us the biggest return on investment for the next 5 years, but it becomes a live entity.
Yeah, it looks like a very complex situation, because I could just imagine a CEO that needs to handle these like two very contradicting goals. One is like stabilizing what you have and growing it, and then the other one is like changing what you have and doing something different at the same time, which is challenging.
When I consult on at boardroom level, I think the biggest message that I have is that you don't stop paying attention to efficiency, but make efficiency as important as speed. So don't manage for efficiency, don't manage for optimal operational excellence, but manage for optimal operational excellence on the part which is your going concern, and manage for speed at the other end. And make sure that you get new ideas fast and you do this transformation fast.
Yeah, That really makes sense, because speed is something that is attached to the thought that you're not doing things well. It's either doing things well or doing them fast. And if you want to do things perfectly, you will never move fast. You will just stay at where you are, and that's really hard.
And it's I like the fact that you're saying this, because I don't necessarily mean at the highest possible speed, and maybe the word speed is not so much the word that I was looking for, but it's flow. So make sure that you get continuous flow of ideas flowing through your innovation, and spend time on keeping things moving rather than keeping them in one place, and creating maximum efficiency for that. And if you do that, the continuous innovation process is also, it enables the continuous flow of value through your company from a simple spark or an idea into a new business line or a new product or service.
So tell us a bit about the continuous innovation method. So what's the framework talking about?
So there are two things really. So in the book, I primarily discuss the driving forces behind continuous innovation, the reason why you need it, and it's very easy to look at innovation from the perspective of the three horizons that McKinsey painted us already 22 years ago. But I felt that it was more of an investment framework rather than an innovation framework. So it told companies to look ahead and invest in the stuff that was coming, but not necessarily to actively pursue innovation in the Horizon 3 or the Horizon 2 sphere. But it was taking financial options, if you will, or opening up financial options for investment. And what we found over the last 10, 15 years in my consulting practice, but also in innovation literature outside, is that it's not just the investment and the creation of opportunities. It's also creating an organization that is adaptable to change, and that will facilitate your let's say the landing of innovations or the adoption of innovations. So I can share my screen with a very simple slide, and I thought it was interesting to see that
Sure.
what I can share. I need to. Where is it?
Until you find it, I want to say that it was like the Horizon thing is like 22 years ago, and so many things changed in these 22 years. I just heard a lecture about innovation, and he mentioned that a typical big company will take about 2 years in order to build the strategy, just to think what they're going to do.
Yeah.
While in 2 years, the good startups will just take their market if they're good, without thinking. And these people in startups, they don't know the horizon theory. They're just doing things.
Yep. And I think that's part of the reason why things are different now than they were 10, 15 years ago, is that the technology around us at which that allows these startups, but not only startups, but other companies as well, that allows competitors to take that market space. That technology has become so low level. It's become so available. And it allows companies to go to market with a new product or service so fast that is the driving force behind all of this need for continuous innovation.
Yeah, and it's not only technology, it's the way that you can make money, right? So he talked about that Hilton took like 93 years in order to build like 60,000 rooms, and in about 6-7 years Airbnb got like 10 times that. So it's like different.
And the scalability of particular systems. So Amazon started off with books, and if you read the history of Amazon, Jeff Bezos took books because they were easy to store, easy to sell, and they were around the corner. There was a book depository around the corner. So they started doing books because it was easy, but then they very quickly found out that the same operating model that they had for selling books also applied to many other articles, and they could scale into other markets really, really fast. They had their clients ready, they had their distribution systems ready, they had their technology, their front store ready. So new technology, and we see the same coming up in the financial services industry with the onset of things like blockchain. Technology is really, really fast in the enablement of new ideas and new constructs. So competition becomes much faster.
Yeah.
You asked me about the core principles of the book. I think
Yeah.
on screen now is, I think, the core
Just a
model.
minute. I'll just do this. This. Yeah. Now it's
There you have it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's here.
And it's the interesting detail about this is that I thought of preparing a slideshow specifically for this training, and then I went like, probably all of the slides that I would like to show are the original drawings from my book. So what you're looking at are the original drawings that I have in my book. I created them in PowerPoint and then exported them for the editor. So really, all of your it's also the presentation is called Models and Images. So it's you're directly looking at stuff that is in my book now. It was made in PowerPoint. There's nothing fancy about it.
Yeah.
But I think the core model is, some people will instantly recognize the three horizons framework. It's those innovations, those ideas that we have close to our existing operation. So if the two axes on this model are the technical and execution uncertainty in comparison to our existing organization. So we're here, technical and execution uncertainty of our existing business is 0. And the market and organizational uncertainty is the uncertainty that we have to service a particular market or to change our organization. So this is our existing organization, our existing market with our existing technology and execution capability. The model, by the way, is based on the model created first by Rita McGrath, which is called the Opportunity Portfolio Matrix. So I've borrowed from her work, but I want to give credit to where credit's due. But I built on that, saying, okay, the technology and execution uncertainty, if that is low, if we implement technology that we know and we have the execution capability in our company, and we do that within the organizational construct and for the markets that we already serve, we're optimizing. We're doing what we were already doing, but we're just using more modern technology, or in this case, more data. And the natural tendency of companies to improve and to innovate is straight up. So we stick within our existing market and organizational construct, and we try to apply more technology to do whatever it was that we were already doing, but do it more efficiently. So our tendency is to move up and to automate and make it faster, but we don't really change the value proposition for our clients other than speed and efficiency. But what happens in innovation is that when you apply more technology and you can apply that in a new way, for instance, by having new processes in your existing business construct, what you will see is that you will change the definition of your market, and you will also require new organizational capabilities. So to give you an idea, I did a large program, a digitization program for a newspaper. And the newspaper was using technology basically to do what it had been doing for 100 years. So it used computer technology to do something that is called computer-to-plate printing. And they had an editorial board that was still printing a paper newspaper, but they could do it faster because they got computers. But the paper was still rolling off the printer and being distributed to the clients. Then came the internet, and they found a way to publish the newspaper online. And all of a sudden, they used slightly more advanced technology, but not even, it wasn't a really big gap. And they started publishing articles on that website. But what they did is every day at 4, they would refresh the website with new articles. Imagine this is like the 1990s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And what happened is that you got an exact copy from the paper newspaper in digital form online. And what happened is that editors started finding out that whenever they had published their article, whenever they had typed the text, they would want to publish it online because they didn't have a need to wait for the deadline.
Yeah.
And then technology was improved a little bit so that the news articles could be put online as soon as they were typed. And that meant that there was a transformation in process, because all of a sudden the daily deadline for print, which was a holy thing for the editorial board, that was the biggest moment of the day, that started to dilute in value because, some of the articles had already been published online.
Mhm.
That required an organizational shift because all processes were geared towards meeting the deadline, but now the deadline was, no longer that important. But
Yeah.
also it served a whole new purpose with clients. Clients wanted fast news bites and not the background articles. They wanted instant information on particular things that happened, but they wanted slower information for other information. So the news itself started to segregate. And then they moved on to, personalized websites, creating new tailor-made bespoke news services. They started reshaping their advertisement model, and before you knew it, they started creating user profiles, and they went a step further in their technology development, but also a step further away from their core business models. And what happened was that the core business of what that newspaper was doing at printing news had suddenly no longer was the sole purpose of what the magazine did or what the newspaper did, but they did it as a way to generate business, to create reader profiles that they could sell. And that's when they, innovated into new business models.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of innovation, if you were to take your perspective from your company now, this innovative stuff, new business models, completely new change way of workings, are slightly further away than they are than the transformation issues are. And
Yeah.
they're even further away from the optimization. That resembles the horizon 1, 2, and 3. But in fact, it's no longer an investment horizon. It's a company growth and a company change horizon.
Yeah.
So we adopt new technology and we change our markets and our organizational structure as we go along.
So you're moving from optimizing your current processes to transforming to something which is a bit like not as close as it was, to something that is
Right.
further away, into innovating something which is like much distant from what you're currently doing. So
Right.
that really makes sense. That
And
makes
now
sense.
the general idea is that, and where companies make the most mistakes, is that they say, well, you know what, we can optimize our existing business model, and then after a few years, we'll innovate, or we'll do the next big thing, and then we'll organize for that. But that's exactly what is not true anymore, and this is also why we're a little bit further away from McKinsey's horizons than most people think.
Yeah,
Because
do you want to show another one? Yeah.
yeah,
I'm with you.
because what we're seeing is that what was innovative at one point in time becomes your transformational section in a few years. And then let's say if each of these cycles take a year, what is 3 years away and innovative will no longer be innovative because the market has adopted it, and that particular concept is no longer innovative. It might be innovative for your company, but no longer for the market.
Yeah.
So the market is moving down, and that means that even in order to stay in one place, you need to transform every single day of the week. You need to have this change in your organization going just to keep up with market pace. If you want to be innovative, you need to even go faster than the market.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. It's really, really interesting. But would you say that in some cases, there are companies who don't need to innovate, were just fine as they are, and maybe they could maybe merge into a new company or buy a few startups, and that would be fine?
That's a good question. I can think of some industries that innovate a lot slower because this market pace is a lot slower. So there are some industries where changing the core competency of the industry is very capital intensive, and so steel making is one. You need huge plants. You need heavy investments to do so. But you cannot deny the fact that new steel plants are being built around the world every given point of the day. And even though they don't impact our market in a very high pace, they do impact the market because every factory that's being built is newer and more modern and more innovative than they are today. And so the plateaus are moving regardless of the industry. And I think that innovation, in the sense that you meant it, I would dub that maybe not all companies need innovation, but all companies need continuous innovation. So you don't need any, instant, rapid development of something new, but you need to be aware of how your market changes, how fast new opportunities come your way, and how big the impact is of those new opportunities and what that means for you. And I have to admit that, being in the digital transformation sphere for more than 15 years now, I haven't seen a single industry that is not impacted.
So the answer is no.
All companies innovate. The speed at which it happens might be different, but I think the speed is increasing for every single company.
But when we're talking here, we're so sure that this is happening and we see it all around us. And I'm sure that the managers and the CEOs see it all around them. And still, innovation is not that like 50% of what they're doing. The management, the C-level is not handling innovation. They're not thinking, they're not actively putting resources and their time on it. So how come they know they need to change and still they hardly do it?
Primarily, I think because their risk and reward system is based on plateau 1. So they're handling within the confines of the first square, if you will. So moving back to this, their activities are on plateau 1, which is the going concern of the company today. And I tend to say that there is a glass ceiling between these two plateaus, because moving from plateau 1 to plateau 2, moving into this innovation sphere, means also moving out of your risk-reward scenario, your short-term risk-reward scenario. And since innovation is hardly ever strategic, it comes down to individual line of business managers or even lower line management to pick up on an idea and start improving and managing it into their daily operations and their processes. So either innovation is strategic and high volume, high value, and we get heavy investments into new big bets, or we take the smaller bets, so the plateau 1 or even the plateau 2 improvements, they tend to get into this glass ceiling where managers are just not interested to do something outside of what they're being rewarded for, or what is being seen as sensible to do for the organization.
Yeah.
And
so what do you tell them when they tell you this is like, we just want to stay more or less in making what we are doing right now a bit better? Yeah. So you cannot just scare them about stories about blockbusters, right? They know about these stories.
So the solution to the problem that we found is that you need to take innovation out of the project sphere. So what we tend to look at innovation is, somebody has an idea, let's do a project and see if it works. And those projects are always budgeted, but they're also weighed against the result of other projects.
Right.
So what you're saying is that it's an investment decision based on how does this investment relate to the revenue that we make on other investments. And then innovation has a very poor score, obviously, sure, because it's stuff that we don't know how much value it will generate. We're not certain how much to invest. We don't know how it works yet. So innovations tend to drop out of the portfolio. And so we need to find a way to create a continuous portfolio of innovations that we can manage for value, and in very small steps say, okay, we've identified the highest value innovations as quickly as possible, and then grow them into something that is acknowledged by the entire company as something of potential value. And we've created something called the Continuous Innovation Framework for that. And I guess I'm sharing that on screen. Oops. Here. Let me see where we are. Oh. I'm not quite sure what you're seeing on screen now, but
I see the graph still, but maybe I need to delete it. And then,
okay. I can. No, I think I'm sharing the wrong thing, so I'll share something else.
Yeah. So actually, some of our users, some of our viewers are listeners because we have a podcast. So I'll need to describe what we're saying.
Okay, so I'm pulling up a website that is called continuousinnovation.net.
Yeah.
And it displays a framework for innovation that corporates can use, which is basically a process blueprint. And it's a blueprint for an innovation process which runs continuously in the organization. And that takes a good idea from anyone in the company, and it takes 6 weeks to try and find out if that idea has any value. And those 6 weeks are what we call a switch, a 6-week innovation challenge. And if you will, they are an agile sprint for innovation teams. So you get a multidisciplinary team together. It's an incidental team, so it's not a fixed agile team. It's an incidental. Team, 5 or 7 people, and they're given 6 weeks, 1 day a week, to try out if that idea has value. And they do so by taking the biggest assumption that we have with our idea. It might be technological feasibility, it might be the delivery of value, but they take the biggest fail factor, what Eric Ries calls the biggest fail factor in the lean startup. And they're going to disprove the biggest fail factor. So if the biggest assumption is that customers like our idea, in 6 weeks, we're going to do a mock-up, go visit customers and ask them, would you want to pay for this? Do you like the idea?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, we take another 6 weeks. And then we prove technical feasibility, because at that time, that is the biggest fail factor. And we do another 6-week innovation challenge. Every time, it's 1 day a week only. It's not a full-time project like a Google Sprint. It's not a project where we have a project manager and lots of overhead and lots of money invested. It's roughly 30 to 35 man days, and that includes women. And then they do 1 day a week. They spend fully focused. So it's 1 full Tuesday, 1 full Wednesday. It's not 8 hours. It's 1 fixed day a week for 6 weeks. And they try to disprove the biggest fail factor. And when they succeed for 3 times in a row, they've basically proven to the company, this idea has value. We've put in little time, but we've proved that there is problem-solution fit. It has potential value. Now it's time to scale up. And by having that process and that continuous process for each idea, we keep the cost low to prove the fact that it makes sense to invest. And that breaks the glass ceiling that I talked about before. Then obviously we've expanded the framework into a full framework so that you can manage a portfolio, and most of all, that you can link it to the corporate strategy. So you get senior leadership of the organization comes in. We call it the Continuous Innovation Board, which sets strategic goals and value goals for innovation to achieve. And then we link innovation directly to corporate strategy or to LOB strategy. It might be one level lower than senior leadership in large corporates, but we build a portfolio that is geared towards achieving strategic goals, not chasing opportunistic momentum. And then, by gradually doing switch after switch, we keep proving that this has value, that the idea has value, until we reach the point where the company says, okay, let's scale this up. We're convinced that it works. It now can stand its own ground against other projects and other investments that we're doing.
Yeah, I think that it's we talked last time, and I told you that I have a program called Catalyst, and it's very, very funny because it's 6 weeks and it's only 1 day, and it's strange how we got to a very similar idea. Yep. But it makes sense to leave the people working and not take them out of what they're doing and then bringing them back, because sometimes it's hard to manage it, and then it's not linked to your daily life, and you're just taking out of what you're doing all the time.
Exactly.
And the results could be so much more when you're doing it with different people and different talents, with different diverse expertise and skills in order to get to what you want. And if you're doing that at scale, you have so many people trying out innovative ideas and understanding what could be done or what is the potential of innovation, which is so important for the culture of the whole company.
Absolutely.
Which is another thing. Okay, we're almost done. I have so many more questions, but I'll ask you your number one tip for innovation leaders.
My number one tip for innovation leaders is to make sure that you start innovating with people from your own company. Take it out of your innovation department and get innovation done by people inside your organization. They have really bright ideas on where to improve, but they also have the direct connection to the market and the customers that will run. And they are the key to creating a culture of innovation in your organization. If all of the employees and all of the leaders in your organization, so line managers, start understanding that small contributions to innovation like the switches will lead to long-term continuous flow of innovation, then you have this innovation culture, and you will drive that. And you don't need to strive for the Google Friday. You don't need to strive for any other, artificial mechanism. Basically, what Google did was tell everyone, if you have a good idea, we have the right system in place for you, the right mechanism in place to try it out and prove its value as soon as possible. And I think the continuous innovation framework is geared around that idea. So my advice would be to these managers, create an innovation culture by getting everyone in the organization involved. Manage the time, show leadership that you can contain costs, that you can govern the breadth and the depth of the investment, and that you will always put the value creation first. I guess that's my idea.
Makes sense. I think that in some cases, you need to really change the way that people perceive what they're doing and what is their role within the company. Because many people, they think that this is my role, I'm like a small cog, and they have so many other talents that is not expressed in their daily lives.
Absolutely.
And it's like a waste of human resources, which is the biggest resource you could have in a company. So innovation will enable them to express these like talents. And more than that, this way you can have these people who want to do, they have the feeling that something needs to be done, and the change is like burning in their fingers, and they're staying with you and they're not going to another company because they have a way to.
I fully agree.
Right.
And I see that in practice. And I guess also I think that the key lesson that we have from the companies that have implemented the continuous innovation framework is that every 6 week in pitch week, which is when all of the teams that do switches get together and present their ideas to senior leaders, that is like, that's like the big festive day of the 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks, you have this high power, high energy event where people get really, really excited about their ideas. Even the ones that come to the conclusion that their idea has not enough potential, not enough value, they will still be excited about the fact that they got the opportunity to try it, and they're going to come up with a new idea to try out another switch. It's very powerful.
Yeah. So where could people hear more about you and your work and contact you?
All right. So I think the first place to start is the website called continuousinnovation.net. It is a free website that is now on screen, where you can find the framework. And if you click on the framework, if you click on each of the icons, you get an in-depth explanation of what that item entails, how it works. So it's a process that you can go to and that you can find out for yourself. It is the world's first ISO 56000 compliant framework. So we've benchmarked it against all of the ISO criteria, and we meet all of the criteria for the innovation management system. So it works in large corporations and small. All of the documentation is here. And if after that you need more, or you want a more structured approach, we have a number of trainings that you can follow, and they're also listed on the website. There are some trainings that you can do, and we have some implementation partners that can help you to implement this. So if you want to get in touch with me, look at the About, click the contact button, and you'll get in touch. Or maybe from I don't know if people have my email address in the invite, or buy my book. My address is in my book as well.
Yeah. Or
find me on LinkedIn. I mean, just type in my name. It's not the easiest name in the world.
No.
It's as difficult to write as it is to pronounce, I guess. But make a screenshot, see my name, look me up online.
Yeah, I will add your email to the description of the video, so it will be good. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot and insightful. And again, I really love the book. So
thanks very much.
You should buy it. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining us. You're much invited to visit invincibleinnovation.com, and I'll see you next week for another insightful talk. See ya.